Okay, welcome to the panel discussion at Lykke Books, where we're talking with 4 of our regional authors as part of the Southern Regional Book or Author Fair that's been happening here today. Thanks to all of you. I wonder if we could just pass the mic and you can tell us a little bit about who you are, what type of books you've written, and if are you independently published or who your publisher is. We'll start with you, Frank.
I'm Frank Weber. I'm a forensic psychologist and true crime author. So I do interviews in homicide, sexual assault cases, I've profiled cold cases, and I've been interviewed on shows like Snapped and Murdered by Morning. I initially was actually picked up by a national publisher and have since bought my rights back out. And just because I've had more opportunities become available, and I had a good conversation with my publicist asking, okay, do you want to give your publisher half of what you make the rest of your life? I decided that I don't, but it was getting more expensive with each book to buy my rights back, so I thought I just needed to do that, and that's ultimately what I did.
And I'm Rhonda Buerkle. I write children's books. I'm from Blanco, Minnesota. I started writing a long time ago, but I actually started seriously writing back in 2000 when we all had plenty of time to work on projects. So I started out independently published through KDP, and then now I am what's called hybrid publishing through North Star Press out of St. Paul.
My name is Payne, and I live up in Longville. The accent does not come from Longville, but I am a transplant now, and I write suspense thriller fiction, and I am indie published.
Hi, I'm Lien. I'm a little bit different type of author. I write creative nonfiction, personal experience stories. I'm published via a non-profit publisher out of Park Rapids, Minnesota, called the Jack Payne Writers Block. And I guess we do 6 or 7 titles a year. I'm actually on the executive board now, trying to get writers an inexpensive but quality book published, which is a really hard thing to do these days. So we work through KDP at the end to get printed, but we do everything in-house as far as editing, illustrations you have to hire out from other people, but we do the editing and the formatting and work all in-house at a very convenient price for people that are very associated with the group. So, yes.
I'm just going to give you a quick little overview. You guys can jump in if you want on some different types of publishing that I had written up a little bit. So you've got traditional publishing, and everybody knows that a publishing company takes take complete control of your works and the publishing process of your book. You write the book, they pay you in advance, hopefully, maybe not, and then the publishing company edits, formats, illustrates, designs, they print it. They're also in charge of distribution and marketing, but in return they keep a portion of the profits, but generally they own the rights to your book. And then there's self-publishing. Anyone can go and self-publish if they want. You can publish just about anything you want online nowadays. It's a matter of what type you want to put out there. If you want to put out quality work, if you don't really care, then I guess you could just look at it online and hit print. But most people I know that self-publish, they're really putting out quality work. They have editors, they have illustrators, they have whatever they need. It's the wave of the future. It's just the literature, the industry hasn't really caught up to it yet, so there's still kind of a stigma about it out there. Luckily, that I've seen in the last couple of years, I don't know about you guys, kind of a turning around of that, which is good. But you do your own writing, editing, illustrating, or you hire someone on your own, basically, and then the print finds someone to print it and then publish it mostly online. I did mine through KDP, which is a subsidiary of Amazon, but Amazon was originally a book publisher. A lot of people forget that. So there's other venues online as well. And then this is done without the help of a traditional publisher or company. And then now I'm what's called hybrid. So I chose to tell you about hybrid as well. So it's kind of a publishing model that combines elements of traditional and self-publishing. Most aspects, a hybrid publisher functions just like a traditional publisher, with the important difference is that authors subsidize most of the costs. So I pay for most of the costs, and then in turn share the profits with them. And then you do not get an advance on royalties, but most of the time you share the cost with that. And yeah, that's another way you can do it. It just depends on what kind of a book you want to put out there and what your goals are for your writing. Yes, please.
There are advantages and disadvantages of each. So when I had a formal publisher, for example, my first book, they sent me a picture of a forest and a lake and said, here's your cover. And I said, yeah, I don't like that. And they said, it doesn't make any difference. It's our book now.
Yes.
And so I got an argument with them about it. And they said, what do you want? And I said, I want a young woman waiting for a ride. That's what I had in my head. And they said, well, send us a picture. I said, I don't have the picture. And they said, we'll go with our cover. I said, I'll send you the picture. So I sent them a picture and they said, yeah, we like our cover better. And so I said, okay, because I was thinking, you have a good idea, you should be able to convince other people. So I said, okay, how about this? Before we go to publishing, let's go to a large book club in Minneapolis, and I'm going to have a photographer take the picture I wanted, and we'll set my picture on the table, we'll set your picture on the table, and ask everybody to grab one. And everybody took my cover. And they said, okay, you get your covers. And then we had a discussion about this. Why was it such a big deal to you? And it's such a big deal because, you know, we always say you can't judge a book by its cover, but we do. That's the bottom line, is because you go into bookstore, you don't have time to read every book, you know? You just look at covers and something catches your eye. And if I can't get somebody to pick up that book, I can't sell it, no matter how well it's written. And so you deal with those issues sometimes. And by the way, the covers on all my books are just people from Minnesota who look like people from the story. And so all of them get to enjoy that and their friends, so that's a lot of fun.
Yes.
My books are all based on my early life on the Navajo reservation, so everything that I write has a Southwestern theme. And my covers, I go through a group called Story Laboratory, and they edit, and they put me in touch with a photographer in Sedona, Arizona, and he takes wonderful pictures of the entire cliffs and the rocks around Sedona, Arizona. So it's very important, I think, what your cover looks like. And I buy the rights from the picture from him. Well, sometimes he just gives it to me and says, you know, take it and use it. But I think I agree with Frank, it's very important that your book looks professionally done, and the way I don't use KDP, I use BookBaby, and they do a pretty good job. You do need to get your book edited, though. You have to have a professional company edit it. Well, I guess you don't have to, but if you want it to look good and read well, you do need to have it edited.
Just to add into that, besides the cover, the title can always get a lot of people's attention too. In this case, this is a picture of my cabin, which I write about, that I had my artist, who's a friend, so I could deal on it, do a watercolor of the cabin in autumn foliage. But the title grabs people too. I find it, this one, for example, my first book, Firewood Happens. People kind of go, hey, this guy's got a sense of humor maybe, and that's what it is. It's won an award for humor. So away we go. And in my case, I do have one professional editor. Editing is so important. I've been judges for many. You have to get editing done. Most of the editing, you know, is done by our writers group, who is a bunch of seasoned writers, and they're good editors, give you good constructive feedback, and then we have the final editor. And the good thing about it is the writers group doesn't charge me for editing, and they're good.
That is nice. Does anyone have anything else, Bree? Do you want to?
I have a question about.
We can take some questions from the audience now.
Can I just ask,
Oh, sure.
we'll repeat the question just so we.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
Publishing. How do you find the right publisher for you? And then the second part of that is, do they just like take over your book then? That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Okay, the question is, how do you find the right publisher, and do they just take over your book? My publisher didn't change any of the writing. Their big issue was the cover, and then ultimately that I ended up getting my way with that anyway. It's interesting because I was first told you have to have an agent. And so I sent my first book, which was Murder Book, to an agent, and I write from first person, but from more than one perspective. For example, some of the chapters, most are from the investigator's perspective, some are from the victim's perspective, some are from the offender's perspective. And when I sent that out to an agent, I got a letter back saying, nobody's ever gonna buy a book written like that you have to choose, either write it all from one person or do it in third person. And then I thought, well, hell with it, it just won't be published, because that's how I write. And then I thought for a bit, and I talked to Krista Sukup, who runs this Blue Cottage agency, and she suggested a publisher, and I sent my book directly to them, and they said, this is gonna sell, you gotta start on a sequel. And so it's interesting, but about a month after I got the letter from the agent that no one's gonna write a book written from more than one perspective, Gone Girl came out. And that's exactly how it's written. Number one book in the nation. Yeah, it's like, okay, you're probably not right about that.
Right, thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, Jen.
I too published first with a professional publisher. They changed the length of the book because it was too long. They said it has to be, I believe it was around 100,000 words or something like that. They took names out, they changed names of the characters. I write from a viewpoint of growing up on the Navajo reservation. They didn't want any of the language in there at all. And if it was, they wanted a glossary, which is, well, if you know the Navajo language, it's very difficult to come up with a glossary. What else did they change? I had no control over the cover whatsoever. And anyway, I had it out, oh gosh, I don't know, several years. And finally I did what Frank did and said, no, I'm gonna republish this, I'm buying back my own rights, and I'm gonna write what I wanna write, I'm gonna put the cover on it that I want to be on it. And I'm gonna write from the viewpoint and use the names that I want to use. Whether you know it's a Navajo name or not is not my concern. So.
Right. All right. Oh.
Just to comment on that, with me working through the Jack Pine Writer's Block, which I guess would fit the hybrid model, they have, you sign a contract, they have limited rights to my book for a year, then it's all mine. And I don't have to pay for that, I don't have to pay to get the rights back, but they do get a minimal percentage of each book that I buy the books through them. They get a minimal percentage of each book I buy from them, and then everything else is mine, including the marketing, which is a big deal. They do some limited marketing. They have a website which I use as my own because my picture's on the front page of it. But marketing, it's then up to me how much I want to market, how much effort I want to put into it. So.
I have a question about that. I just have one quick thing to say about how I found my publishers. For me, it was a matter of trial and error. I knew I wanted a small publisher. I know I wanted more of an independent publisher. And and basically you just go out there and you interview, you ask for samples of what they're going to do for your book. And a couple I was like, no, absolutely no. I'm not going with this publisher. This is not what I want. But then when I found the one I want, we just kind of clicked. And I think that's kind of what you do, you know, for you guys.
We all talked about this a little bit, but the marketing is one of the could be a benefit of going through a traditional publisher. Can you talk about, because you're all regionally known authors, and there's these different kind of circles of influence that you have in how you get your book out there. Can you just talk about how you approach that, and maybe what you see, what has and what has worked well for you, and where you maybe find challenges?
One of the things about getting your books marketed is that's interesting to me, because it's almost the opposite of writing. That you write because you can separate yourself from everybody else, go and reflect, and that's what's fun. And now you have to go convince strangers to buy it. You know, that you think about it. What if they hobby?
It's true.
And yeah, and basically, you know, books go as far as you peddle them. And, you know, one of the things that we think is Stephen King is touring, you know, that he still has to get out there and talk to people about books to sell them. And it is a matter of just getting out there and speaking. I actually had done a Texas tour 3 years in a row. And it's funny that I've got a good following there, but first I had to get my books out there. And people had to start reading them but basically talking to people and letting people know what they're about.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, I like to be in my home writing as well. So then when I get out there, but this is absolutely great fun too for us too. And I think the most success that I have is I do a lot of reading in elementary schools, and we go in and we read, and then they put out book orders, and that's where the most of my book sales come from. Otherwise, it's just word of mouth. You know, my book started out, my first one started out as a love letter to my children, and from there it just got popular. And then I donated some to local libraries, and then all of a sudden they're asking for more. And then now it's kind of like you just get out there, like Frank said, and you start contacting places and seeing if they want you to come read. And that's how the work is out. And hopefully sooner or later they start contacting you. Yeah.
I write about the Southwest Navajo Reservation, and so I am a member of Western Writers of America. I am on the board of Women Writing the West. So I attend conferences. We're at the Tucson Book Festival. A lot of the things that I do are based in the Southwest, even though I do live here in Minnesota now. But having regional attachments, memberships with groups that write what you do and support what you do, and attending their conferences and taking your books out there and things like that, that I think makes a big difference too, as well as doing the things that we're doing here in Minnesota. We go to writing conferences here as well. Rhonda was at the last one I was at. It's very important, in my opinion, that you take writing classes when you're first starting. Learn how to write. I heard that from Alan Eskins years and years ago, and I never heard of him before. And one of the things he said was, take writing lessons. You think you know how to write, and you don't really know how to write. So I think it's important to join a group, get in a writer's group, join a group that writes what you write. I go to Jack Payne group as well, and in your area, and that will sell books. It's not all Amazon and BookBaby, or I do have a website. You can buy the books online, but it's much more fun to do a tour. Like I said, you did a Texas tour. It's much more fun to do that and go to book fairs and things like that. Now that AI is really coming out, I don't know where all of that's going to go, but if you are writing, thinking you're going to be some kind of a rich millionaire, you might want to look for a different job. No offense to Stephen King, but you write because you love to write, and that's where you need to be if you're going to be in this field for a while.
For me, the marketing has been little easy because of my past professional job. I had a very public job, and in fact, a lot of that job involved was in the environmental protection field, where I had to drive up to a stranger's house or a stranger's business and contact them about, maybe just a routine inspection, but maybe an issue, a complaint that I heard and everything. What I do now, I've taken that lack of fear of public contact, and I research a store ahead of time. I deal with a lot of gift stores in northern Minnesota too, because unfortunately there's not a bookstore in every town. And my books are something that sells very well to the tourist trade in northern Minnesota in the summer. So I pick out a gift store in a big touristy town. I do a little research on who owns the store and stuff. Go meet person to person was a big thing for me. And at this point, I've got some 40 or 50 stores that I deal with personally, and I've been doing that with many of them for as much as 10 years. And it's a lot of fun once you get to know the people. And in a lot of cases, you're dealing with women store owners and everything, which you find that the key is find the movers and shakers in a small town, and usually it's a woman. And away you go. And not having been successful every time, some people just go, oh no, I'm not sure, but they've proven themselves, and it's been a fun way to market. But it takes effort, it takes miles, and then I do a lot of, particularly in towns where I don't have a store selling them, I'll do an art and craft fair or just a craft fair, something like that. And I might be the only author there, but the books sell well if there's traffic.
That's true. And I do have a publicist. I'm with Blue Cottage in Brainerd, Minnesota as well. So you do have a publicist to do some of the online and the advertising and things like that on Facebook and where.
Do you have more questions?
Mine's kind of a silly question, but you brought up Stephen King. If they made a movie or a series of your books, would you do a cameo?
I was thinking more along the line of Alfred Hitchcock. I was exactly talking somewhere in the background. And I do want to make a comment about writing, because I didn't take writing classes, maybe I should have. But I've been fortunate to pick up a kind of a groundswell of followers. And I don't necessarily start at the beginning when I write a story, because what occurs to me is scenes. And I think about a scene and it gets very graphic in my head, and I think about, okay, this would be really cool. And so I just start writing that. And then, because part of it helps with me is I have structure in the sense that it's based on an actual case. And so I know there's a series of things that's going to happen, so it doesn't really make any difference where I start. But where I feel most creative at that moment, what scene I feel most creative about writing, is I'll do that. And I tell people that if you're writing, you don't have to start at the beginning, because that's, I think, a mistake a lot of writers make, and just keep hammering away at that beginning and they feel like it's not going anywhere. Well, don't worry about it. Because the beginning, it just introduces the story, and the end summarizes it. You can start in the middle anytime.
That's really cool. Yeah, and I don't know about any of the rest of you, but I have note paper everywhere in my car, in my house, and now we have these wonderful things called smartphones that you can just dictate to. But when it pops into my head, I get it out, because you never know where it's going to end up in the story. So, yeah. And yes, I would probably do a cameo, but this is pushing it for me.
I brought my newspaper with me. I take the Navajo Times. You can see my newspaper here. My books aren't necessarily current, like, right now, but I do take the Navajo Times, and it keeps me kind of in touch with the people, what the concerns are. Right now, the huge concern is water. That's been a concern forever, but right now the Colorado River seems to be drying up, and Navajo people just lost a case, a government case, about whether or not they have, how much water rights they have to the river. So I keep up with a lot of the day-to-day things that are happening on the reservations. And after growing up there and living there, and after we got married, a lot of the issues seem to be the same issues that they had forever. And but it's a way of staying in touch with the language and with the people.
I'm probably, again, an anomaly. If I take a note, I can't read my own handwriting. So I don't take very many notes. Luckily, I seem to be able to remember a lot of the things. I was trained as a photographer to a certain degree. I tend to take kind of pictures in my mind, I think, and that would make a good story, and I try to roll with it. Mine, and big deal, is just getting out there and doing something, whether it's something at my cabin, cutting a tree down, trying to fix an old outdoor motor, or taking a week-long trip out to Isle Royale or Montana, Wyoming, things like that, and just trying to find a story there, a series of events that works good into a story, usually with a humorous twist. So my writing process is get out there and then get it done, and then in the winter try to find time to write it down.
I try to write about issues that are going on, like I said, on the reservation. My first book is about the uranium mining that was going on for years and years. Even when I was going up there, I worked in a uranium mine. And the government wanted to close them and not really ever getting around to really closing them completely. And the radiation poisoning and the blood dyscrasias that have happened, the leukemias and things. So I try to use issues in my stories, even though my stories are, murder and mayhem, but it's still based on issues. The second one is the bootlegging that goes on, the alcohol bootlegging, and a lot of the drug bootlegging. Once the casinos hit, and they didn't hit for a long time, the Navajo president for years and years did not allow casinos, but as you know, they're there now, so they can sell alcohol. but the Navajo Reservation itself is still dry. So we've got a lot of stealing that goes on from the casinos, and they sell them out on the reservation. So that's a big issue. You know, drugs and alcohol. By the time I graduated high school, I think almost half of my class was gone. Car wrecks, suicides, whatever is a huge issue. The third issue that I'm working on right now is pretty much obviously the missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirited people that are, you know, that are disappeared, and up here in Minnesota too. So there's a lot of stories out there that you can fasten on an actual event or an actual thing, problem, issue, and write about it in a fictionalized way, like Frank does with murders, in a fictionalized way, but yet, well, yours isn't fiction, but that speaks to a true issue, an issue that really is going on.
I was just going to ask, you talked earlier about writing groups and about some of the kind of supports that you use to help kind of with the creative process. Can you maybe just talk about how do you find a group in your area? What advice would you give? And what's the kind of a single, if you have one piece of advice you could give aspiring writers, what would that be?
I don't want to write.
I'm not in a writing group either, but what I would say is, because we don't have any in my area, but what I would say is just start writing. That's probably the biggest piece of just start. People don't think they have it in them. They don't think they could do it. Just start writing. And then if you don't have a writing group in your area and you'd like one, start one. You know, that's my thing. Or find other authors. Like when you go to author fairs like this, there's many wonderful regional authors out there. And just connect with some of them. That's actually how I got started. I read an article about another local children's author, and he became my mentor, and that's how it started. So I would just, that's my big plug.
Okay, after you mention that, we'll get back to writing groups in a second, but I always think you live in Minnesota. You're around people every day who are good characters for stories. They live around you, you know? And what got me thinking about this is a few years ago, I was in Ireland and I toured the Guinness Brewery, and I got talking to one of the breweries, and he told me that they actually have 8 employees that, with the same name. And because everybody has the same name, then everybody has to have nicknames. And it reminded me, because I go through the communities where my books are and walk through them and talk to people. And one community had a number of people named Ray, so I used that in my last call book where I talked about one person, for example. They used to call him Oktoberfest Ray, and Oct means 8 in German. Eventually they just called him Rate, for Ray 8. And another person, Ray Loscheider, had the unfortunate moniker when Jennifer Lopez changed her name to J-Lo, they called him Ray-Lo. But my favorite guy was the guy they called Ray Ray, and they always called him Ray Ray because he repeated everything he said. That he would go onto a bar, give me a beer, gotta go. And I got talking to this guy, and I saw him, he did this stint, in a sense, when he'd go into a bar. He was always in a hurry. If the bartenders were busy, kind of tantrum a little bit. He'd look around, find someone with a full 16-ounce glass of beer, he'd go over and start talking to him. He'd say, you know, there's a little trick I can do. I can drink an entire glass of beer in one swallow. And they would say, that's not possible. And there'd be this big conversation. And Ray would say, okay, I don't want to take your money, let's bet a quarter on it. Okay, so he'd pick up the glass, he'd tip it up, take him about a dozen swallows to finish it, he'd set the empty glass on the bar and say, I guess you're right, and give him a quarter and walk away. So I love including that real stuff and the real weird things. Like in one of my books, I talk about a gas station in Minnesota that gives haircuts and tans. I mean, it's like, that's just fun. Okay, pass it on.
I forgot what we were talking about. Writers groups, yes. As I said, my publicist is Blue Cottage, and they hooked me up with the writing group where our, I guess you'd say our leader is Candace Seimer. She writes a lot of the historical fiction here in Minnesota. And she hooked us up with Jack Payne Writers, which is, they're up in my neck of the woods, up at Park Rapids. I'm in Longville. And so my writing group consists of those people. And you were at the last yeah, the winter retreat, so you're
It's great.
you're
That's
kind of,
when you bounce off each other.
yeah, you're kind of hooked up to it. I mean, then it is. It's a place where you can bounce ideas off of each other and just be together with other people that love to write and that are as sort of strange as you are in ways of writing and talking. And so that's kind of fun too.
I'm a big fan of Writers Group, and not because the first one I joined was the best. I joined the Writers Group in my area when I was already a somewhat successful writer doing magazine stores. I did a lot of magazine stores when I had a real job, and didn't have the time to do books. That Writers Group, I found that they deferred to me constantly. Well, you're published, Mike. What do you think? What did you? And little old me wasn't getting much out of it, really. I was a teacher, and I stuck with the group and they matured some and everything. But I found the Writers Group in northern Minnesota, the Jack Payne Writers Press, by accident seeing something in the newspaper and contacted them. And that one did fit my needs. I need good, constructive feedback. I've taken writing classes, but I was a biology major in college. I had freshman English. I need a lot of help with grammar, that type of thing. These people are seasoned writers. There's 8 or 9 that show up to meetings on a regular basis. We have it sometimes been up to about 15. Get excellent feedback, constructive feedback, and not, well, that's, you know, they are, like I say, seasoned writers and know how to get feedback. And it's meant all the world in getting my piece edited and moving me along on the writer's process. So I always tell people, look for a writer's group, start a writer's group. The first one might not meet your needs, but keep trying because we all need help.
True. Any other questions?
Anything we didn't talk about that you think we should? Yeah.
Oh, I have a comment. When you guys were talking about marketing, I always remember listening to William Kent Kruger talking about going to all the indie bookstores, and it would be the bookstore owner and their cat. And I just thought that was a wonderful story. But look at, and he's a wonderful resource also, even if he's not here. So it's
Absolutely.
A comment along those lines, bookstore owners in Minnesota, especially the seasoned ones, have gotten a little bit gun shy of local writers, new writers, for lack of a better term, self-published writers. And I was lucky in that I had a little bit of head start with the magazine article publishing world and a good mentor on my first book. And the first book got some success immediately, was reviewed with the Star Tribune, which really did make a difference. If you can get it done, it really did make a difference. And just out there and winning an award and things like that. But bookstore owners are very gun shy, particularly self-published authors. One story I always tell is about I introduced myself to the owner. I finally got a chance to meet her, and all of a sudden she looked like a deer in the headlights. And she was like, well, I could maybe take your book and maybe put it on the shelf, and if it didn't sell or whatever. And I said, I had the ability to do this, and it shows you just how hard it is to start. I said, look me up on Ingram Sparks. She pulled it up, and she was immediately, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know what Ingram Sparks calls me, but it shows that my books do sell. And away she went there, and her words to me at the time, I didn't think when I was going to be a bookstore owner that I'd be in the business of denial, but I am, and every day there's somebody walking in with the best book ever written. And they've got to try and convince the bookstore with limited bookshelf space and profit margins to take their books. So it can be a very tough business, and you need to take a lot of advantages. Like, for example, the Star Tribune a review that got real good reviews on the book and got it going. It was because I knew somebody. I'll be honest about it. I knew somebody who knew somebody. I got my book reviewed. So.
I do the Goodreads review every year, and you get quite a lot of feedback from the Goodreads, and they the remarks that are published, usually there's winners of the contest, and so you end up mailing out 3 or 4 books that are free to the winners of this contest. But that's a good way to get publicity as well as from the local reviews. You need reviews, by the way. Yeah, you need to contact people that do reviews. The publicist, Blue Cottage, handles a lot of that for us.
I want to make just a quick comment on it, because one of the things people ask me, that my first books were all award-winning books and my last books have not been. And part of it is that I went to independent publishing. One of the things I didn't realize is that you're not eligible for a lot of awards anymore, because what happens is a lot of companies like Goodreads, for example, that when they have their awards at the end of the year, they only take books from national publishers. And so you're not eligible for probably the vast majority of those types of awards. And so there's a sacrifice that you make when you make those decisions too.
Just maybe to offer some insight into the bookstore. Yeah, I think on the bookstore end, I've commented to several of you today, like, we see kind of what happens once the book is published and is ready to sell, but didn't know kind of what the process is upstream, so thank you for sharing some insight into that. I think, you know, we're in a small town in rural Minnesota, and I think there are probably 3 or 4 authors that reach out every week to me via email or stuff in the store. But it's a lot, and I think that it's hard to differentiate a lot of times. Is this a local person? Is this somebody who is across the country? It's hard to tell. So I appreciate, like, you all investing your time and taking the time to come and meet me and spend time in the store, because I think it makes a big difference, and I'm excited to all your books now. Are there any last questions before we kind of wrap things up with the panel?
Thank you so much for getting.
Thank you, and thanks for being open to doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, buy their books, and I think, I can't speak for the public library, I think that several, if not all, are available through our public library system as well as be available here. So thanks for taking time today. Any last words any of you want to say?
I'm good.
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I always have to end with something humorous. And so I do a lot of assessment interviews. So I'm going to share this with you, because one of my favorite things is when people misuse cliches all the time, because you have to stop and think, what is that cliche supposed to be? So I was doing an assessment on a young woman. You've probably all heard the saying, work like you don't need the money, dance like nobody's watching. She said, yeah, my mom always used to say, dance like you don't need the money.
And feel free to purchase any books on your way out. Thank you.